And if you think about it and you put yourself in the shoes of being a cancer patient, you're sitting in your oncologist office. What do you want to hear? I want to hear about what that drug's going to cost. I want to hear about how that drug can support me. And I want to feel empowered to ask my doctor if that's a treatment that's right for me.
One of the trends that we see and something that ASCO has predicted is that by 2030, there will be a shortage of oncologists by about 2,200 physicians. And so that is a big problem.
That's scary.
It is scary, especially because patients are living longer, which is a great thing, but they still need to be seen as follow-ups from their oncologists. And so getting in to see those oncologists is harder. The oncologists have less time. So it's a compounding effect.
Welcome to the MM+M podcast, live from ASCO 2026. We're here in Chicago, and I think it's the perfect time of year to be in the Midwest as someone who's from the Midwest. I'm Lesha Bushak, pharma editor at MM+M, and here with me today is Linda Rushaw, Chief Commercial Officer at Patient Point, and Nicole Chambers, Executive Vice President, Commercial GPO and Oncology Development at Patient Point. And today we're going to talk about the biggest trends in oncology at ASCO this year and what makes community oncology the place to move the needle. Linda and Nicole, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Lesha. It's a pleasure. We're really excited to have the chance to talk with you and our friends at MM+M.
So before we dive in, I'm just curious, you've both been here. It's the first day of ASCO. It's Friday, May 29th. What was the day like for you so far in Chicago?
It has been a very busy day. We've had a lot of clients and providers come to see us in our business suite here. And we've just been talking to them about what's going on at ASCO at the actual conference and meeting with them to talk about all of the new things that we have going on at Patient Point.
I love any chance where we see all facets of the oncology space coming together, and ASCO is fantastic at that. You have providers in the sense of service providers like Patient Point, but then we also get to talk to our incredible physician partners that are here and then our pharmaceutical partners as well. So it's great to bring all those parties together and really talk about how we advance oncology. It's an exciting time.
Wonderful, yeah. And I want to start out with a big picture question, and I'm sure this might be a different answer by the time the weekend is over, once we kind of see all of the, the biggest trends happening at the conference itself. But going into the conference, what would you say right now is the most important key trend in the oncology space?
One of the trends that we see and something that ASCO has predicted is that by 2030, there will be a shortage of oncologists by about 2,200 physicians. And so that is a big problem.
That's scary.
It is scary, especially because patients are living longer, which is a great thing, but they still need to be seen as follow-ups from their oncologists. And so getting in to see those oncologists is harder. The oncologists have less time. So it's a compounding effect.
It breaks my heart because if you talk to these doctors, they got into this business for a reason. They want to help patients. They live their lives telling people that they have hope, and yet they are being stressed more and more to do more with less. And I know that's a common theme in everything today, but in the world of treating patients with cancer, nowhere is that more prevalent and more important. And I feel like that's the role that Patient Point can play, is by giving them the technology and educational tools that if we can save 5 minutes per oncologist, per patient a day, then that means more people with cancer are getting able to be seen by more oncologists and hopefully making the world, dare I say, a little better, one patient at a time.
And, it's interesting that we're seeing that oncologist shortage because, at the same time, there's so much cutting edge research and treatments happening in the oncology space. Mm-hmm. There's so many new therapies coming out, but having that oncologist shortage definitely creates an issue for patients. Yes. So how does that shortage reshape how oncology marketers target and who they target?
Great question. And since I've been leading the client side of our business, 34 years now, but most recently, the trends are really shifting. And I think the role of sales reps is always going to be important. You can't replace that face-to-face connection. But if you're looking at the trends of being able to get that FaceTime with an actual oncologist, the lead time, what are we seeing, Nicole? Between 3 and 7 months to get an actual face-to-face appointment for a rep.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine that. You've got a new drug launching, or you have a new indication or some efficacy benefit that needs to be communicated. Well, the oncologists want to know, the pharmaceutical manufacturers want to get the message out, but there's a challenge in order to do so. And so we're seeing pharma really evolve in terms of not only how do I reach the oncologist, but the increasing role of the rest of the staff and APPs. And Nicole is certainly an expert on that. I also think we're seeing a shift from the blockbuster drugs, and God love Keytruda and Opdivo and some of the other big name drugs that you can't turn on your TV without seeing the message. The amazing developments in oncology that you referenced means there's more niche indications. You think about lung cancer. There used to be a drug for lung cancer. Now there's non-small cell lung cancer. There's small cell lung cancer. There's lung cancer with EGFR mutation, right? There's all these indications, which presents great hope, but also the need for pharma to really hone in and more targeted opportunities and ways to target the physicians. Do you agree, Nicole?
Yes, absolutely. And what I would say is pharmaceutical companies need to adjust some of their messaging to be ask your care team, because again, it's not just the oncologist treating that patient, it's multiple people in the actual practice. And so the advanced practice provider is very important to that delivery of care.
May I add something to that as well?
Of course.
I think the opportunity for pharma is really also to truly partner with physicians. And I think there's always been a bit of a tension, right? Sometimes it's a great relationship. Sometimes it's, I don't want to hear from any more pharma. And I think doctors are actually really embracing that now, saying, I really, after COVID, we heard that often from our oncology partners that, gosh, I missed seeing the reps. I actually missed hearing about some of the drug development and the way trends that were moving in the industry. And so I think oncologists are embracing that. But to Nicole's point, also the pharma manufacturers have to think about better ways to truly support the doctors. It's not just getting in front of them and giving them a sales pitch. And I think they're evolving to that. That's why they're sponsoring things like Patient Point, who can help give the respite, perhaps, to the staff during the day, or can be an alternative vehicle to communicate some of the key benefits of a drug that otherwise they wouldn't be able to find out about. So I think we're really seeing a shift in those two parties coming together to work more closely together to solve that need.
Absolutely. And you also mentioned the APPs and these other, HCPs kind of within the healthcare system beyond oncologists, and how they're becoming increasingly important for marketers to reach as well. So as they move to the center of care delivery, how can marketers share messaging that really resonates with APPs?
So I would recommend that they first learn about the APPs and how they interact with the patients and how long they take. And then I would move their messaging to be a little bit more educational, maybe a little bit more down to earth. And I would also recommend having them be part of groups that you do some market research with. Understand them, understand what resonates with them. They're all about caring for the patient. So thinking about side effects and things like that is very important to them, and making sure that the patient has some quality of life.
Nicole, the interviewee has a question for the fellow interviewee, which is, how do you see the oncologists themselves, right? The lead oncologists, the lead physicians at our practices, they, from what I hear from you, they really are embracing the APPs and the entire staff to help them deal with that shortage that they're dealing with. I mean, do you want to expand on that at all?
They really have to rely on them because they don't have the time, unfortunately, to spend 20 minutes with the patient. But a nurse practitioner or a PA are able to really step in and help support that oncologist. And so they've become an extension of that oncologist. They used to be called extenders.
Oh, really?
They don't really like that term. So we've come up, APPs is the term.
And APP stands for?
Advanced Practice Provider. And so they are really studying right under the oncologist and understand what that oncologist needs to know as far as labs go or genomic testing. And they're able to bring it to the doctor and say, hey, this is what this patient is dealing with, or this is the side effect that they're dealing with. Should we down dose? Should we change therapy, they're the ones that are having that conversation and then going back to the patient and saying, okay, here's what we're going to do.
And if I could build on that, one of the key challenges across all of pharma, but certainly in the world of cancer care, is affordability. And the oncologists themselves certainly does not have time to have those kind of discussions. So to Nicole's point, both from a compliance, from a support program, a lot of these brands and manufacturers have invested heavily at creating patient support programs, but getting that message out there is what's critical. There's nurses to support a patient through their injections or infusion treatments. And so the APPs, I think, really play a pivotal role in making sure that patients are getting the true care and support that they need, not just on the drug initially, but pulling that through for compliance and ongoing care.
They really do. And then there's the role of the financial counselor also. And so they're there to help manage that financial toxicity of cancer. These drugs being developed are expensive. It costs a lot of money to develop them. And so being able to have someone in the practice that can help the patient secure the funding, either through manufacturer copay support or foundations, to help them take their mind off of finances and just focus on their treatment, really goes a long way as well.
Yeah, we hear, the world of financial assistance is becoming more and more prevalent. You can't go to one conference, one session without hearing that pain point, because if you're a doctor, you don't want to write a drug or put a patient on a therapy that they can't afford or their insurance isn't going to cover. So making that message known. And of course, I'm going to say Patient Point is a great way to do that. But if you're a patient and you're sitting in your oncologist waiting room and you see available to you with X copay or financial support programs or nurse support is available, you have to get that message out, and you have to count on alternative ways from the in-person to be able to communicate that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the affordability thing, especially in the last few years, with policy pressures and stuff like that, it's been talked about a lot. And I think it's one of those things that marketers have to remember, that it is a big part of whether a patient will get on a treatment, whether they adhere to a treatment over the long term. It is a really integral part of the picture. And you use the term community oncology. So for someone hearing it for the first time, or for our audience members who maybe aren't too familiar with it, how would you describe what that means, and why does it matter so much today?
So let me tell you what community oncology is not, because I do think a lot of people, when they hear the word community oncology, they think it's a tiny little practice in, rural Iowa.
That's
and that
a great
is
point.
So not what we're talking about here. Community oncology means they're independent. So they're not part of a big health system. Often it's independently owned. They may be part of what's called an aggregator, which is a group of practices that will come together to have easier business things taken off their plate. We all have to realize too, an oncologist is not necessarily a business person, but they are the CEO of the practice. And so there's a lot that goes along with that: human resources, revenue cycle management, all of those things. And so there exists these entities that will take some of the business off of them. But community oncology they are big independent practices. We have one practice in Texas that has 310 sites, but they are considered a community oncology practice. And so it's important. The reason that patients want to get treated in community oncology is it's close to home. So you may go to a big academic center and get a second opinion, but for that treatment, you really want to stay in the community. And they're just as well educated and up on the latest. In fact, I think they are more so because they are struggling to compete with some of the bigger centers, that they make sure they are up on the latest that's going on in oncology.
And when oncology practices are stretched really thin, as you mentioned at the start of this conversation, what can marketers do to really help add value rather than more noise? Especially as, there's so many more treatments coming out. It's such a noisy space. We're going to see that at ASCO this week. How can marketers really get their attention?
The average consumer is exposed to approximately 5,000 ads a day, which I find that number staggering, but I've checked the source many times. And if you think about every time you go onto social media, or you're walking down the street, or you're going through the airport, think about how many ads you probably see in a day. it's the same thing. Pharma is one subset of that. And I shouldn't even exclusively say to pharma, but any healthcare brand. And so it starts with delivering the message at a time when the consumer or the patient can actually be receptive and process that message. That's naturally in the physician's office. That's what this channel is called, point of care. And we're talking a lot about that within our oncology circuits here. So you deliver that message at the point of care, and then getting further to your point of what should that message be? I've seen an incredible evolution on the positive side from the messaging that pharma brands are putting out there to years ago. Frankly, it was all the TV ads. They'd run a message on TV and we'd pull it through in the doctor's office. And there's still some of that, and some of that creative is incredible. But what we're seeing is an evolution of content and messaging created specifically for the point of care. And if you think about it and you put yourself in the shoes of being a cancer patient, you're sitting in your oncologist office. What do you want to hear? I want to hear about what that drug's going to cost. I want to hear about how that drug can support me. And I want to feel empowered to ask my doctor if that's a treatment that's right for me. And we're seeing a real evolution over that type of messaging. And I think the pharma brands win because they're empowering the patients, but ultimately the patient wins because they get to see a message that can truly help them in their care.
And I'm curious, as the new generation of oncologists, largely millennials, they will be Gen Z, like, are you seeing a shift in how you target the younger generation of oncologists, like, who are on TikTok and Instagram and using AI in their daily life, personal or during work? And I'm just curious if you're seeing like a shift at all with this new generation of oncologists.
I think definitely a lot of our oncologists have taken to TikTok and become their own personalities.
Right.
So it's actually very interesting. We have a doctor, Dr. Flora, who is his own personality and has his own podcast and company and everything. And he's really become a great spokesperson and someone to learn from, even though he's actually not millennial aged, but he has taken on all of the, what I would say are younger technologies to get the word out there on different treatments and things like that. And so I think that our technology, being that it is electronic or digital, is a nice complement to all of that as well.
Yeah, if you want to follow someone who's really embracing the younger demographic, both from oncologists as well as for the patient segment, Dr. Flora is fantastic. There's also the Onc Doc on Instagram, and he's made it entertaining. You smiled as if you might have seen that, right? Yeah. So because it's, to your point, doctors are also consumers. They are bombarded with the same number of ad messages that we are every day, and oncologists in general tended to be a little bit older on the spectrum. And so as that population ages out and retires out, I think the wonderful thing is this younger demographic is going to embrace tools like non-personal promotion and other opportunities to help them provide better care.
For sure. And given that Patient Point has an extensive oncology provider coverage, how should this pipeline to oncologists fit into brand priorities?
Marketers are being challenged to do more with less. They need to be more efficient, more targeted, and ensure that every dollar they're spending is making an impact. That's what's fueling our future drug development. I, for one, want to keep seeing cures for different cancer types. And that's only going to happen if the pharma companies are profitable and able to invest in further clinical trial recruitments. That's one amazing benefit. Again, you've got a patient. They have been sitting in that office. They're failing on the treatment that they're on. That does happen depending on the significance or the late stage of their cancer type. Isn't that wonderful that we can deliver a message about a new clinical trial, or perhaps there's a drug that's better indicated or more efficacious for a later stage cancer type? It's empowering and informing the patients to get on the treatment they need. And I hope that pharma sees that is an alternative and a supplement to the other things they're doing to make sure their message gets across to the right patient at the right time and in a very trusted environment. I'm going to go off just for a bit because I think there's a lot of speculation, right? Meta's not fact-checking anymore. And so there's a lot of myths out there about cancer care, about, ivermectin. I mean, do you want to, we hear that from our doctors. I read this online on the intranet. It's got to be true. And so delivering your brand message in an environment where it is trusted, where there's an implied endorsement of their personal doctor, nothing is going to resonate or be more impactful for those cancer patients than that type of message.
Yeah, I would just say that you would want to, I think sales representatives are great, but you need that surround sound. And so
Yes.
Point of care really helps with that by filling in, oh, I did speak to that rep about this, but now I'm seeing the ad on my back office screen really helps to solidify what that drug does and how it could help patients. And then in terms of the patients, seeing the new things or now available, that's all hope for them.
Right.
And so we want to keep those messages at the forefront.
And my final question for both of you, as we enter the weekend at ASCO, I'm just curious what you're both just very excited about this weekend, whether it's, at the conference itself or in networking events, or maybe just being in Chicago.
Well, I have a son who lives in Chicago, so I'm always happy to be here. I think it's one of the best cities in the country, especially in the summer. Don't ask me that in January. But again, I go back to my point where it's seeing the energy and the excitement around the continued development of this category. I have so much admiration and respect for our pharmaceutical brands, for the continued drug development, and for these doctors who treat the cancer patients. And too often, I will close with this point and then turn it to Nicole for closing thoughts. This industry gets such a bad rap. And we are an industry that is saving lives every single day. And it's one that I am incredibly proud to be a part of and will continue to see us shine at events like ASCO. So excited to be a part of it.
I'm excited because all of the new therapies that are coming out, I think people often think, well, why can't they just create a magic pill and cure cancer? And you can't. It's over 80 different diseases if you really break it down. And then with the advent of genomic and genetic testing, you can really pinpoint and target therapies that help mutate back a certain gene and really help patients in a targeted fashion. And so to me, seeing all of those things continue to develop is truly exciting, gives me hope, and I think it's just great for patients. So
Dr. Flores says it well. There's not been a better time to get cancer.
That's a really good point. There's
Right?
so many new options, so many new treatments. It's genuinely mind-blowing when you start looking into some of the science and some of the breakthroughs that are happening. So excited to see what happens this weekend. Linda and Nicole, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
thanks for having us.